Okay, it's time to take a look at the conflict that's ramping up once again between Azerbaijan and Armenia. Azerbaijan is a corrupt, ridiculous oil dictatorship located in the Caucasus and headed by life dictator Ilham Aliyev and his wife. So they are once again threatening Armenia and putting a countdown clock for going to storm back into Armenia. Clearly, this ridiculous, shitty country has the plan to take over all of Armenia, including Siunik and other parts. They already ethnically cleansed Artsakh, which was a horrible disgrace that was basically given a free pass by our fucking excuse for an international community. And now we have them pushing the envelope even more without any real pushback. And I want to look at why this is happening and what Armenia can do.
So Azerbaijan is once again threatening Armenia. The latest threat comes from Ahmet Saroglu, and he said, new military operations are expected between Azerbaijan and Armenia on April 4th to 6th. May God protect the Azerbaijani army. If third countries do not get involved in the war, Azerbaijan will handle this matter itself in a short time. Otherwise, we can ask for help from Turkey and Pakistan. So Saroglu tweeted that on March 30th, and the war rhetoric from Azerbaijan is getting worse and worse. Finally, the EU is taking a little bit of notice, but it's very much at the last moment. The EU's envoy to the South Caucasus, Toivu Klar, recently condemned Azerbaijan's threats against Armenia, which are just all over the place. You have these countdowns threatening Armenia, claiming that they're on Azerbaijani land. You have even the weather reports inside Azerbaijan lying and saying that parts of Armenia are Azerbaijan and all this sort of thing that has characterized the pseudo-historical and fake history that Azerbaijan has made up to justify its land takeovers. And Azerbaijan has obviously rejected what Klar said, and they claim that Armenia is fully to blame for everything happening. Baku is saying that Armenia needs to fully withdraw from all the places they name, and Armenia's ambassador to the EU, Tigran Balayan, accused Azerbaijan of preparing once again for an invasion and asking for more EU support. It certainly does look like Azerbaijan is directly planning for an invasion in the next several days, which they refer to as the matter. Now we have several invasions by Azerbaijan into the Nagorno-Karabakh contested region, and this was an area that was formerly in the USSR and declared independence in 1991. At that point, Azerbaijan directly got into conflict with it, which has flared back and forth. It ended up in a 2020 invasion by Azerbaijan, which led to the occupation of much of the area, and also the subsequent blockade of the Lachin corridor, which was a lifeline for ethnic Armenians and for those living inside Nagorno-Karabakh in the capital Stepanakert and the other areas. Azerbaijan has been a constant aggressor, making up false propaganda against Armenia, claiming that it is a fake country, basically claiming all the things that actually apply much more so to Azerbaijan. Because of the 2020 invasion, Azerbaijan took numerous Armenian prisoners of war, committed rampant war crimes, and never faced any justice. In fact, several of their war criminals were welcomed home as heroes. The second invasion of Nagorno-Karabakh last year led to almost all the ethnic Armenian population fleeing. Over 100,000, around 120,000 refugees by some counts arrived in Armenia and other countries that they could get to. They had a horrific experience. They lost their home and possessions. Fellow Armenians have been trying to help them, but this mass exodus was just a total shame on the world's conscience that happened right in front of all the most powerful countries in the world. So we're talking about Russia, United States, all these countries that Armenia hoped might end up enforcing some kind of justice in the situation, did absolutely nothing and turned a blind eye to it. Armenia's current Prime Minister, Nikol Pashinyan, recently said Armenia will abstain from the Collective Security Treaty Organization, CSTO, which is kind of like a Russia-supported mini NATO. And Armenia's future and who it will ally with is definitely on the table. Pashinyan is talking about this Crossroads of Peace project he wants to push that will basically boost infrastructure connections between the Black Sea and the Persian and Oman Gulfs that should go through Armenia according to his plan. However, this Crossroads of Peace project doesn't necessarily look extremely viable, and there's all sorts of people that are basically treating Armenia as a second fiddle and not taking it very seriously. Um, on the other hand, Pashinyan is at least focused on boosting defense cooperation with the EU and also on potentially getting more support from nations like India and France, who are already strong defense partners of Armenia. There will be an upcoming Armenia EU US tripartite meeting where the Armenian leadership will try to pivot further towards the West and get Azerbaijan to back off. But at this point, the weight of power is on the side of Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan's foreign ministry spokesman threatened Armenia over that alignment with the West and said that any overt Western support for Armenia would be considered a destabilization of the region and would be taken as a direct threat by Azerbaijan, which is already obviously saber rattling and issuing constant genocidal style threats on a weekly basis. Now, some US senators in heavily Armenian districts have called for providing more support to Armenia, but it hasn't really happened yet. And the recent Azerbaijani invasion of the Second Nagorno-Karabakh War has really shown how Armenia can't count on anyone it thought it could, especially Russia. And the United States, obviously, is not a strong ally, um, like it or not. And although it is true that an invasion of Armenia by Azerbaijan would go against US interests and generally destabilize the region even further when they need that not to happen, the main friends of Armenia at this point are honestly France and India to get their weapons built up and to enhance their deterrence capabilities. The US could do a lot more, including short range air defense systems and counter drone technology to deal with these really powerful Azerbaijani drone systems. However, the West is also cautious about that because if they supply a lot of equipment to Armenia, they are worried that it would fall into Russian hands and act against their posture in Ukraine and their supplying of defense cooperation with Ukraine. So the at this point, Armenia needs to do whatever it can to militarize further and become stronger and get Azerbaijan to back off. Israel's ongoing arming of Azerbaijan is another topic I want to mention because this has infuriated many Armenians, and frankly, rightly so. Nobody should be doing any business with the pariah regime of Azerbaijan and its inbred leadership. However, there is a powerful lesson to be learned from Israel that Armenia can keep in mind, and that is that Israel doesn't ask for any permission for its actions, which includes some that many would agree have crossed the line on human rights. However, Israel is willing to work with basically bad guys to survive and keep its military dominance. Armenia needs to stop being so idealistic. It needs to treat Azerbaijan as the lethal threat that it is, and it needs to start seeking any partnerships it can and intensifying the defense partnerships it already has. Thanks for watching. See you next video.